All right, people, the week of content continues. We've got another recap show that Disney couldn't wait an extra 2 weeks to put out. We're already into 2022 as far as my mind is concerned. Wow, they didn't even give us a break there. And we're back in the recap area that we actually like doing, that being Star Wars. Chris, we're here to recap the Book of Boba Fett, first episode entitled Strangers in a Strange Land. Are you pumped?
Yeah, dude, the force is strong on this live stream tonight. Who isn't pumped to yet again go back to Tatooine?
And it's
I
not
mean,
even
come on.
May yet. And it's not even May yet. We are being gifted early. All of that and more. Stay tuned. Oh, man. I know I pump up your music a lot, but like that just sent an electric shock up my spine. What is going on, people? We are officially back. I know that it's still 2021 while we're recording this, but this is officially going to be our first TV recap show of 2022, the new year. Oh, man, like I said, the Hollywood gods are upon us. They're really testing us as far as just seeing how much we can handle. And we're going to do about as much as we can, of course. Chris, I'm so happy to have you back, man. I missed you. I missed doing this, man. I missed the weekly recap show because the last consistent one that we did was Halloween. So
I know. I'm really excited to be here. We got our good friend Matt of Basic Entertainment hanging out in the chat. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that, man.
Adam, what's going on, dude?
Adam as well. What's up, dude? Got the whole gang here tonight. Yeah, I don't know, Dom. With that music, I wanted to obviously have the little Star Wars theme, but like also not get us taken down from YouTube. So I was trying to do my best Michael Giacchino.
No, but no. Don't not Giacchino. For me, like that was straight Zimmer. That was straight Zimmer there. Like with the combination with like the synths, like I'm not even kidding, dude. Like blew my mind. Really blew my mind. Yes, definitely. Cool. Adam, I would definitely recommend watching it before coming back to this because again, this is with our recap shows, no such thing. Spoilers abounding, so just beware. Ultimately, so Chris, we're back with it's kind of crazy because with just how much content was flooded with 2021 within the year of 2021. What's so interesting is that we really only got one Star Wars property after Star Wars ultimately was one of the things that got us through the dreaded year of 2020. So it's kind of interesting right now that we're about to enter a year that supposedly, if Disney keeps to this, will have at the very least 3 and potentially up to 4 live-action Star Wars shows. So before we even get into this, Chris, is this the year of potentially the Star Wars flood, or do we mark an interesting territory the way that we did with Marvel in 2021?
Well, I think this could be the year of flooding our channel to 1,000 subscribers. So before we even talk about anything Star Wars tonight, I think the most interesting thing would be how many subscribers can we get off this stream tonight? So if you guys already haven't, hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell so you get notified every time we go live every week. This whole Book of Boba Fett release month to February, whatever you want to call it, because Disney just said we were getting 2 episodes today, and then we got one. So
totally lied to us. Totally lied. Although, actually,
you know who's not going to lie to you, though? Us. And you know, hit that like button on this video, subscribe, turn on the bell so you can get notified for honest reviews and news and information, because we got
honest reviews here.
What a rug pull Disney pulled yet again, Dom.
Yes, they did. Yes,
to answer your question,
yeah,
I think, who knows? Like, we had supposedly a Squadron movie coming out, and now we don't.
That's not happening now.
We were getting a Gina Carano led TV show,
and now we're not happening now.
So I mean, I don't know what Disney Star Wars will do. All I know is that we at least got something today, and we're going to talk about it tonight. I wish I could be more specific. I'm not just trying to be all showboaty and funny. I honestly don't know, dude.
That was the best reaction I could have possibly asked for. And I love how you automatically outline the things that Disney has already canceled, because even though I will say that from a public PR standpoint, they're doing a much better job of keeping their failures down low. DC is sort of started to get there, but like after, again, like I think it's undersold just how much public scrutiny Star Wars was, and really how short of a time period it really has been since we've gotten this kind of new brand of Star Wars on Disney Plus. And so the most interesting thing to me about this is, for within our circles already, it already seems like Star Wars has kind of become like the new batch of content, right? It's still event content for now, but it ultimately still does feel like content because now, because of how bad of a job the movies did, and because they really still haven't existed in cinematic form since 2019, which, as we know, Star Wars is something we always associate with cinema. I guess the other big question to consider is, does Star Wars face the risk of becoming just yet another disposable IP and just yet another TV thing to watch, just like every couple months, okay, we get the new Star Wars thing, cool,
As much as I hate to say it, I feel like that's the deterioration that Disney's sort of started to promulgate just by their failures, and not only by their failures, but by like not even failure to execute the shows, but just failure to like give us any sort of like structure to go off of. Like, say what you will about, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, any of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, like they stuck to the script. Like they gave us an announcement, they told us when it was coming, they hit their quota, they made it happen. Like you can at least rely on them as a fan. So I think the number one thing to do in this internet age to lose your fan base is to be unreliable and to not constantly be there. And it's like, this is our first Star Wars drop since Visions, which I honestly don't even count. And before that, it was Mandalorian season 2, which feels like forever ago. So it's like, I think they're already losing us as much as I really hate to say it. As much as I really hate to say it, I don't feel too positive about the Star Wars IP right now and where it stands.
Right. Yeah. Because again, we just came off a decade of where Star Wars was just struggling to just maintain like any sort of storytelling consistency. Right. I wrote an article for guyatthemovies.com. Shouting out our guy right there, Joe. Joe, what's going on, dude? Thank you for continuing to let me write stuff for your channel. But basically something along the lines of the fact that, let's see here. Here we go. Basically something along the lines of that Disney's attempts at maintaining Star Wars cinematic brand ultimately came from the fact that, if you really think about it, Lucas just kind of inversed the original Skywalker saga within the prequel structure, this time telling the story of a fall rather than a rise, ultimately. And I think the number one inherent storytelling problem with the movies that ultimately came about is the fact that they kind of tried to sort of do both, but they didn't really stick to their guns, so they ended up coming up with something really half-assed and weird. And another interesting point being that to me, and I do believe this, I mean, I don't quote me on this, I don't know if this was ever mentioned before, but the idea was that Lucas, in addition to developing a TV show, had always wanted for the future of Star Wars to be in TV, because that's where he felt that like a lot of the more interesting stories could have been told, right? And so in a strange way, right, I even wrote this as well, that Filoni's kind of vision for that kind of how Filoni, to me, truly fulfilled the role of the heir apparent years before Disney Plus was even a thing, is how well he pulled off Clone Wars and Rebels. And so as a result, once Disney Plus comes around, the fact that Filoni is hand-selected by Favreau as the chief storytelling dude for this, what I find most interesting here about kind of the mix between The Mandalorian now kind of leading into Boba Fett, because personally, if I'm just getting one thing off my chest right now, it's that I think that any sort of problems, I don't know, can be conflated yet between Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, just from a stylist, just from a craft standpoint, storytelling standpoint. That's a completely different story that we can get into later on. But I think the most interesting thing here is, in a strange way, Star Wars right now as it exists, I don't know if it'll maintain this going forward, because right now we've pretty much only gotten one genre, but Star Wars as it is right now and is kind of a mix between a lot of the neo-westerns that we've been seeing, while also maintaining kind of like Filoni's brand of like different type of Star Wars that he carried over from the animated TV shows. And that's kind of what we saw in The Mandalorian. It worked for some, and others it definitely has its highs, but it also has its lows. And the one thing I can say going into this premiere of Book of Boba Fett is that it has most definitely maintained, I feel, that pace. I don't know. What do you think of that assessment?
Yeah, I think it's a good assessment, but I'm just still a little hung up on like the overall place of the IP, because I'm like getting all these flashbacks now, since it's been a while since we've talked about Star Wars really on this channel. And the last time we did was for the Mandalorian season 2 recap show, which was forever ago at this point. And it's just crazy to me to think about, like, yes, everything you said I agree with, but also like Star Wars is still in such a weird place. Does any of what you just said matter? And like we were hoping so desperately it would be fixed by now, and it's not. It's only gotten worse. And I don't know, but there is a lot actually to talk about, I would say, in the way of more triumphant success when it comes to the actual show, Book of Boba Fett itself. But like, while we're still on our topic, like starting off just refreshing catching up where we're all at with Star Wars in our heads and where this thing stands. It's like, yeah, I see your points and I agree with them, but like we're in such a weird place. Like, does it really matter too much? Like, I feel like there's bigger fish to fry. It's just weird, man. Like, Star Wars is like that fighter that's past its prime, but the thing is, he got injured so young, still too young, like still has years in him, right? And I don't know what's going on. It's weird.
That's the thing, man. Weird. That's the thing. Because if you take it from a different standpoint, at least for what I'm getting, I think we're like, I've said this before. I really do think that of all of kind of like the big franchises that have kind of hopped to streaming, I still think that Star Wars has been the most successful. I know that's just me. No one's going to agree with me, but I really enjoyed both seasons of The Mandalorian. Obviously, The Bad Batch, I was going to go gaga for. From what I saw of Visions, I enjoyed it. It still has a long way to go. There's still a lot of track that needs to be established here, but I still think they're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I hear that. And I suppose I should sort of further articulate my thoughts. When I said last time we spoke about Star Wars, my brain was in live action. Of course, we had Bad Batch, and we covered that very extensively here on the channel. And that was great, but we all really know that is sort of the ancillary content where Star Wars lives and dies on its Star Wars lives and dies on its live action as much as they should take note from what's going on in the animated world.
Never gonna happen. I've been saying this for a minute now. Never gonna happen.
So as much as I agree with you, they should take note with what goes on in the animated world. Unfortunately, they don't, and so it still lives and dies in the live action world. So with that being said, I mean, why don't we sort of like dive into the first official topic we have down here and talk about like this is the next step in Star Wars storytelling, which I know we've kind of already talked about a little bit, but I feel like there's room to elaborate because it's kind of like what Matt's saying, like Star Wars knows how to do a series. I think that they do. I mean, Mandalorian certainly grew on me over time. Bad Batch was phenomenal. I love Clone Wars, and there's so much rich storytelling where it's basically, we won't give any specific plot details because it's something I'm writing, but Dom's been giving me some input. And, you know, he was like, this is a cool idea, and I know you want to tell it as a movie, but there's so much to tell here. Maybe it should be a series. Spend a little more time with these characters and flesh this world out a little more. And so Star Wars, I think, is really utilizing that, realizing what they have and sort of spreading it out so that we can sort of get the fullest and best of what they have to offer. I'm kind of sick of the Disney Plus whole first episode of their series being like a clip show to refresh you from where you're at. Have you noticed that at this point? Yeah. It's like such a well-made episode. I was sitting there, these shots are beautiful, I was saying to myself, and I was like, oh my God, like that's like a different adaptation of the original theme from the Cantina Band, and I love how alive this world looks and feels. But really then afterwards, when I got my sort of I'm back in Star Wars glow,
it's the premiere of The Mandalorian all over again.
It's just like a hey guys, you remember, here's what happened, and then next week we'll actually start giving you new stuff. Did you feel that way? I don't know.
I did, but here's how they got me, man, because look, I will fully admit that the fanboy stuff really gets to me, and usually it really irks and irritates me when when fanboys get nuts and go on the message boards and on the Twitters and on the Instagrams and are all like, oh man, they didn't do this exact sequence that I had fantasized in this fan fiction that I've written 3 years ago and now desperately want to see put to life, even though I had nothing to do with the creation of this thing. Just goes into a whole different conversation about the inception of pop culture to its disseminates from its fan base and how that differentiates from the original creators. I don't know. I've been in a real creator headspace lately. You guys will see that in future podcasts that we put out. But if there's one thing that kind of goes to that point, it's that ultimately it was the Boba Fett like filler material. I know. It's such a cheap trump card, but when it's done right, it is effective. That's what's throwing me off about this. It's like, okay, as far as the future plot, okay, I get it, but that wasn't the main plot. That was the B plot, right? If we're just talking about it from a storytelling standpoint, right? Where do we start off? With him in the tank having the flashback. That's the prime storyline of this episode. And if anything, right, and I'm really going to go out on a limb here. Again, I'm still not talking about the specifics, but if I'm really going to go out on a limb here, it's that Disney Plus is accomplishing with Star Wars what Marvel made successful for so many years, which is this is the next stage in their chapter in storytelling. Mandalorian 1 and 2 were not seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. They were the first 2 chapters of this whole long, interesting, like overarching saga where we're going to have 3 different time periods all going simultaneously together, or like different areas with different characters, and they're all going to jump over and they're all going to cross over. And effectively, this is Star Wars going a little bit back in the marketing, doing exactly what they tried to do for and failed to do for 4 years with the movies. This is that. This is where the success comes from. This is what locks people in to actually continue to watch things each week, is knowing that each thing is going to set up for the next thing. And as far as providing filler and context material, when they can do it and when it works, cool. Awesome. I'm all in favor for it. And the Boba Fett origin right now, great. Loved it. Awesome.
No, I think you're totally right. I mean, this is definitely the Marvelification of Star Wars, and I just think it comes with, hey, who's the owner of both of these properties? A little mouse called Mickey, right? I mean, it's gonna happen, and honestly, it's smart. I can't say it's not smart. And again, like, while I recognize the problems, I think my bias comes into play here because, yeah, I was also very charmed by this episode, same as you. Like, it just felt good to be back in the Star Wars universe. The filmmaking was so confident. I really felt like there was a clear direction. Everything felt so realized. I loved the performances. The characters were great. The dynamic between Fennec and Boba was so strong. The way that they sort of painted the world, post Jabba, Boba taking over, how is he gonna rule? It felt even a little Game of Thronesy in a really cool way. Like, I kind of liked it.
I love how now, after like the year, because this is the thing that everybody forgets too. Everybody forgets that one of the many things, so many things that we lost from 2019, which was like the last great year going into the pandemic, and now we're in this weird emergency now. So many things that people forgot about is obviously they were fretting about, oh man, what had happened if Marvel had gone on? Could you imagine what would have happened? People forget, again, we lost Game of Thrones in 2019 too. But the thing that I'm loving now too, and everyone was critical of me when I decided to do this, how Game of Thrones is slowly seeping its way back into the pop culture, because you're seeing all these comparisons to it and all of these different properties. And once House of the Dragon comes back, mark my words, the Game of Thrones level will be back on. So that's very interesting that you bring that up, kind of how Game of Thrones is seeping its way back into the pop culture every little bit.
And you know why I think I go to the Game of Thrones analogy? It felt very mature from a storytelling standpoint.
For sure.
The way that they chose to develop Boba and reacquaint us with this new version of Boba as he is now a daimyo who's in control of the criminal underground that runs.
You have no idea how much I love that they use that term.
Yeah, it was a really cool term, and I think it was very fitting, and I think it was really mature in a sense, like, whereas I think, not that The Mandalorian wasn't mature, but it was a little more campy in the sense that it was kind of like a go fetch and grab and retrieve and all that type of thing.
Lot of side missions, lot of side hunts right there, lot of distracting. Hey, you have to go do this in order to get back to the main quest, Witcher, but...
yeah. You can see the web being spun here, and it actually is kind of one of a higher intellect than I would have expected from the Disney Star Wars era. It almost harkens a bit back to some of what I kind of love about those prequel movies when George Lucas did try to get a little highbrow. A lot of people say it didn't work for them. It really did for me. But this is, I think, a little stronger execution than those movies. But again, it's only episode 1. Time will tell. But yeah, I did really enjoy what I got so far. Dom, I mean, did you want to further explore this filler versus new ideas topic that we had?
Yeah, because it's interesting, because this is, just from like a contextualized standpoint, like, this is the thing that people were writing fanfic about for years. Like, one of the biggest, like, if we're going back to like the original, I'm talking pre-internet, like the original trilogy kids who grew up and were like kind of the first generation of kids growing up. I'm talking like all the way back to like those Gen Xers, when they were like, when they started like writing their own fan fiction that they would like handwrite, and then eventually, obviously, the first couple of Star Wars novels were published. One of the first kind of the big things that originated that was what happened to Boba Fett, right? And obviously, people freaked out when they put him back in the Mandalorian, right? But that was kind of a litmus test, right, for a lot of different things. Season 2, the kind of them dropping stuff, whether that was their initial plan pre-COVID or not. But kind of the idea to do Boba Fett first, rather than do something that could have so easily just appealed to the younger crowd with Ahsoka, right? Because Ahsoka, for the live action crowd, that's a character that the live action crowd is still entirely new to. But the idea to pay homage to that original idea by finally having it come full circle, by finally answering the one question again. It's so funny because this is a thing that a lot of people made fun of, even with Rogue One for, where they're like, again, wow, so okay, you guys hate the new movies, but you guys are going to make fun of the movies that are revisiting the Star Wars era that you prefer, that you vocalize that you prefer, and then you're going to go out of your way and just nitpick the stuff that they're attempting to fix. Certain things from the original trilogy, sure, that weren't explained necessarily, but these, to me, since they're for the most part been so well done, they just add more context. And so the idea of seeing kind of, quote unquote, a Boba Fett like post grade. As far as to where it leads now, again, it just furthers to me what is the power of Star Wars, which is the idea that you constantly kind of have this never-ending saga of stories that can continue to just add further and further context to this galaxy. And now that, again, this entire Disney Plus experiment is seemingly doing just such mass retcons, while may not necessarily yet come into effect, they clearly are being set up now for what we got with the movies. Again, like, I feel like my initial thoughts stand.
Totally. I actually think that was very well said. And I got to say, I think you kind of helped me realize why I felt so surprised about how mature and how Game of Thrones-esque this was handled. And I think it's because this is a character that has been so romanticized, so fan-fictionalized over the years, that now that we're finally getting to see him in the spotlight, it could have got real campy real quickly. It could have been real corny, could have been real generic. I mean, this is really new grounds that they're sort of uncovering here, which is so strange to say because Boba Fett's been a staple of Star Wars forever, but he's just been such a character that was in the background. Now that he's in the foreground, it's a strange thing where, okay, we've known this character for over 50 years now, but we don't really know that much about him. So now's really the time where he's taking the torch and he's carrying this franchise to the next step. And I think I use the torch metaphor now, thinking about Star Wars as, it's in its Marvelification, as we've deemed it. It's like a relay race. That's what Marvel does, right? Falcon and Winter Soldier carries the stick, and then they hand it off to Loki. Then Loki hands it off to, Hawkeye. Then Hawkeye hands it off to, it just kind of came to me. And so I think, like, now that the stick has finally been handed off to Boba Fett, like, yes, he's been on the team for a while, but he's finally getting his moment. And so they could have gone so many different ways, but I love that they chose this mature way because, like, I'm talking with Matt right now in the chat, and he's saying, like, some of the scenes in here felt like a fan film. And, like, have you not fantasized forever what happened to him down in that Sarlacc pit? Because he didn't die instantly. Right. I mean, he's too much of a badass to die, and we finally got to see that. But it wasn't said
that you get digested over a period of like 1,000 years in that thing. So it's clearly told to us that it takes that long.
Exactly. And I'm just going to read Matt's comment because it's kind of where I'm coming from. And it seems like you're on the same page with us, like the Sarlacc pit escape scene, because we've been dying to see his escape for such a long time. And they could have done it in such like a child's way of him blasting out, guns blazing. They gave us a little bit. They showed he survived, but then they got to like the maturity of it. But the filmmaking gave us just enough to satisfy that itch while still leave some of that curiosity and that mysterious nature of that makes this character so great. And so I got to say, like, out of the gates, like, I know I started off a lot talking about the performances and the characterization and the whole web that they're sort of weaving visually and the way it's working with the storytelling. Like, that's why I'm so conflicted right now, because it was kind of like, hey, let's just remember where we're at. We're just going to get reacquainted. Not too much happened. A little bit happened, but not a lot. But you can't be mad at it. If anything, I'm so enamored by it because it was so well done. It's a really weird one for me, Dom. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, what's my score going to be? And I don't know.
You know what? We'll take that out of your mind just for a second, because I never like to think about that until the end, once I've actually finished with it. But just if you're just going to tackle it from a story standpoint, right? I feel like that's something that just a lot of people now have just become incapable of, is really differentiating a lot of the behind the scenes, because we're so flooded with it. It's so impossible to escape as far as the 24/7 hour news cycle. The fact that we're constantly so flooded with the behind the scenes stuff and with the Disney modification of it, and what this thing is going to lead into this thing and that and that and that, it kind of makes it really difficult in order to focus and actually enjoy the story that's being presented. Right? When you constantly just have the thought at the back of your mind of, okay, this is just going to be the next piece of content, right? It diminishes an already diminishing value in product, right? But that's why at the end of the day, as far as the criticism of where to really just pay attention to the story comes in, I do instances of this, because again, just the story of this, to me, bringing in all the points that you did about this being kind of like a story, just this specific episode, right? A story about survival, right? Obviously, it's the most difficult thing to criticize about these Disney Plus shows is the fact that each episode, unlike, say, an HBO show where every episode is a delicious treat that builds up to one amazing package, you know, these Disney Plus shows, the pieces really are just pieces, and you really don't have a full picture until you've assembled a whole. But there's something really interesting about pursuing that sort of puzzle piece as far as like, okay, where is this next thing going to lead? And that's, I think, the thing that they've borrowed from Marvel the most successfully, is Marvel was always so good at setting up the next puzzle piece, and you wanted to put together the pieces and figure out like what the big grand puzzle was going to be, right? And that's exactly what they're doing here. I think that works for this episode, and I think that's going to work entirely overall for this show, because, man, let me tell you something. I am very interested to continue and see what he had to do in order to survive the desert and just make his way, obviously, eventually to Mando versus how he's going to handle things in the present. I'm excited to see it, man. This episode got me pumped. You know, it gave me just enough to get me pumped. And I'm not going to lie, I was worried going in. I thought it was going to be another, I'm like, oh God, if I have to sit through 40 or even, oh Lord, 50 minutes, because let me tell you something. I loved Hawkeye, but those 50-minute episodes were starting to really make me look down at my phone. And I looked, it was 38 minutes. I'm like, let's fucking go. They know the perfect length. They know how to make a compelling story, which at the end of the day is why we praise Star Wars so much. They know how to make a compelling story, and that's what I got from this episode.
Yeah, no, Favreau certainly is a master at his craft, and you toss in Rodriguez and Filoni, and it's a dream team. So before we move into our next topic,
if I could just add one more thing though on Favreau, like how awesome is it? Like we all dream about being the guy that essentially writes Star Wars, right? The guy, and like as much as we praise Filoni, and rightfully so, he does deserve it. The majority of these episodes are written by Favreau. So just imagine being Jon Favreau. You already directed Iron Man, you directed The Jungle Book, you got a giant payday for Lion King. Now you have this, and you're literally paid like $1 million an hour to just sit at a computer and write Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean that's probably.
I just had to run that scenario through your head because I'm like, motherfucker, this guy. He beat all of us. He beat all of us. How did he do it?
While your estimate of his salary is hilarious.
I'm not known for my math skills. But like that's the equivalent of it for someone like us, right?
You could pay me $5 an hour for that job. It wouldn't matter. I'd take the job regardless. Exactly. I know exactly what you're trying to say. So before we move into our next topic, because it is pretty Favreau-centric, we're going to be talking about how this is Jon Favreau's addition to the neo-Western genre, sort of building off of what The Mandalorian started. I want to ask you guys one last time. I know we're annoying about this, but it's because like we had such a damn good year last year and we barely did this. So imagine if we do this going into the new year, where we'll be at. Please subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we do one of these recaps or just anything here on the channel. We have a lot planned, and of course hit the like button. Now, Dom, this was your topic. Introduce it. We're talking about the neo-Western Favreau touch on Star Wars.
Yes, indeed. So the neo-Western has been seeing this really interesting movement over the 2010s. I think probably, obviously, the 2010s will be known throughout history as the decade of the superheroes, but I find it very fascinating that for all of the directors, seemingly within the last 2 years, that only now, after a decade of this being the most dominant form of entertainment, all these directors that are just coming up now, and we're comparing it unfavorably to the Western genre, I find that a really interesting sense of source of irony. That's the word I was looking for, where you had all of these arguably, for a decade that has been dead for decades, one of the most interesting decades for Western yet, with movies like Logan, with movies like The Water Diviner, like Bone Tomahawk, like the 3:10 to Yuma and True Grit remakes, like Hell or High Water, like Sicario, which is more of a modern Western. You know, there's even more. There's been a lot. There has been a lot that people don't realize. Obviously, just look at Tarantino. 2 of Tarantino's 3 films that he released this past decade were revisionist Westerns. And so I find it really interesting that Star Wars kind of way of pulling itself out of its storytelling hole that it found itself in, which is this weird pseudo faux weird woke 2010s take on a Campbell's origin, on a Campbell's hero's journey. We also how that turned out, but I find it really interesting, and this is the reason why I bring Favreau back, because I think the one sort of oversight that I'll say we made in our initial recap per week of The Mandalorian season 2, which again feels oh so long ago, we went out of our way to praise Filoni, but I don't think we went out of our way to praise Favreau, because I think that it's so interesting about this pairing that you have here is that it's ultimately a pairing that really has not existed in Hollywood for a long time, which is that of the creative and the more producerial type. Because what's so interesting about Favreau's career is that for most of it, he wasn't even directing. He came into directing kind of late because he'd already been acting for like almost a solid decade with hits like Rudy, with hits movies like Swingers. You know, he was in the 03 Daredevil. Like he'd had like kind of pursued like this interesting kind of underlying like 90s career that a lot of other interesting like kind of indie directors have popped up in the 90s that eventually went on to, you know. So in a way, Favreau is technically, to me, just from a directing standpoint, like in the same boat as Michael Bay or David Fincher. You just don't think of him as such because of what he's contributed. But ultimately, if you think about it, right? He hops onto the directing chair because obviously of his start in acting, right? But he'd already directed a few movies, right? And he clearly knew what he was doing, right? With movies like Elf and Zathura. But obviously with his kind of role on Iron Man, Favreau was actually in a very strange position that I don't think a lot of other people would find themselves in. I think Joss Whedon almost had this role almost had this role, but then ultimately kind of got flubbed out of it, which is that Favreau, in a strange way, is just as influential towards the creation of the MCU from a producerial standpoint as Kevin Feige is, right? So you take all of that into account. You take all of his accomplishments, everything that he did for Disney, because aside from taking a slight break in between Iron Man and then going back to Disney with movies like Chef, because Cowboys and Aliens was his kind of instance and installment into like, okay, trying to bring back like, and again, that's another like revisionist Western. I didn't even realize that, but kind of his almost like, what's it called? Like his recontextualization of like kind of where Hollywood was going and realizing very quickly that those types of movies would not be making money at the box office anymore. So you navigate that and you pursue that all the way up until today. And you have ultimately what I find is like the best and most interesting possible like pairing, and quite frankly underrated because of still how new it is, pairing of creative and producer. I'm going to use the word producer, not executive, because Favreau doesn't have the power that, say, Kevin Feige does. But I also think the difference being that Kevin Feige also just has a lot more to manage. Favreau's focus is still pretty limited. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up. I don't know. What's kind of your whole stance on that?
I agree with the way you're sort of categorizing Favreau versus a Feige, because while the scope of what they're both dealing with is massive, these Star Wars stories that we're getting, and I call them stories because they're kind of like smaller tales that fit into this giant overall galaxy. So theoretically, right, Star Wars can cover more ground than Marvel, but it doesn't, because we stay in such a tiny little petri dish of the overall overarching universe. So while they're both balancing a lot, I mean, Feige's literally dealing with cosmic interactions and sorcerer supremes and multiverses at this point. While we know there's this giant universe out there for Star Wars, but we're still on Tatooine. That's not to like, sort of poo-poo the craft of Favreau by any means. I mean, he's crushing it. These are very gripping stories. Like The Mandalorian even won me over. I still stand by my comments on the season 1, although I have warmed up to it a little bit. But it was a bit of a rocky road at first. But we've gotten now sort of a feel for the stylisms of Favreau and his grasp. However, like we're still sort of staying in the sand, or you know what I mean? Like we're not really exploring this giant universe.
We haven't left the sandbox yet, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we're not exploring this giant universe we keep hearing so much about, which has been my complaint about Star Wars since Disney took over, and I think it will stand to be my complaint until we start exploring people that don't directly know Luke Skywalker. So like, yes, I think, not to, take away from anything Favreau's done or accomplished. Like I said, I think this was brilliant. I love what he's offering to the neo-Western genre. I mean, I still think back quite often, actually, when Star Wars comes up in my mind, to that one episode of The Mandalorian last season where they're in that town and there's that classic standoff, and it's...
Oh, the Ahsoka episode.
The Ahsoka episode, and it's Ahsoka versus the crime lord there, and that was so beautiful. And then you sent me that meme that someone posted. It's an exact shot from a Kurosawa film, and I mean, how much of a direct homage is that? Because there's one thing we know about George Lucas, it's that he really loved Kurosawa and that style of filmmaking and had a respect for that era. So like the homework's being done, and I think it's really awesome.
And obviously we had another comparison this year as well, obviously with Denis Villeneuve's Dune being released, which, like I said in that review, is the full circle thing coming, which the thing that another one of the things that inspired Star Wars now is being made almost as a result of Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's certainly because the competition of what Disney's done has inspired other people to sort of take other properties and see what they can make, which is awesome, because I think Dune was really great. And I'm all for more mainstream blockbuster entries into the sci-fi world. Like, sure, you have your Foundations and your C's on Apple TV Plus, and those are really cool, but those are like so deep that it's like hard for general audiences to get into. And I like my sort of like Joseph Campbell sci-fi as much as I like my sort of deep existential orphan black sort of sci-fi as well. You know what I mean? So like, I think there's room for all of it. For so long, Star Wars has just been dominating the more blockbuster popcorn flick friendly style of it. So it's really cool to see that like the impact it's having, as frustrated as us diehard fans might be. And I would say that Dom and I are, because we pretty much cover everything they do and we watch it the day it comes out. So, we're going to have our frustrations, but that's just because we're so close to it. I'm sure Matt can agree with that statement too. So yeah, to answer your question, like, I think what you said was perfect. It was a perfect summarization of Filoni's contributions. I think the comparison to Feige was great. And it's not that I'm like angry, just to clarify, like I really enjoyed my time with this episode, and I'm pretty sure it's Filoni has a lot of people he's got to make this decision with. And for a Western, I don't think you want to go that broad. So I think it works for this neo-Western to have it be more take place on one planet, a couple of towns, sort of traveling through the desert. I mean, deserts and Westerns kind of go hand in hand. So it all kind of works out. I just hope as time goes on, as we like pass this torch in the relay race that has now become Star Wars, trying to emulate what Marvel's done, I would like to see new planets. I would like to see new characters that eventually get away from the Skywalker connection. But I'm liking what we're getting so far since, let's say, post this Rey and Finn saga, whatever the hell you want to call that. I'm not calling it the Skywalker saga because, as far as I'm concerned, the Skywalker saga are the first 3 movies.
We still gotta figure out the name for those 3 movies because you're right. They can't be associated with the Skywalker saga anyway. With the exception of Force Awakens, which to me is like a fun, like, bonus material, kind of excluding the 3rd act, right? I'll take the first 2 acts of that movie.
Go watch Dom and I's debate about our feelings on that one.
Yeah, we all know how you thought about that. But yeah, we gotta come up with a name for those other 2 because those 2 sequels.
For now, can we call it the Botched Saga?
That's good, but that's a temporary one. But that can only be temporary.
Just for tonight, so we can speak about it
until we brainstorm about it. The brainstorming session will come, people. Don't worry.
Yes, this will be a huge meeting for us. We're gonna have to have a huge meeting for this.
Chris, I now know what the source of our next production meeting is.
But no, so post the Botched Saga, I'm loving it. I'm really loving it. But I hope we get a little more traveled because look, as much as I like Tatooine, the sand looks the same in every Star Wars film. Not getting anything.
Still taking your beloved line from your beloved prequel. It is still just sand.
Well,
it is coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
I don't know if you know this, Dom, but I hate sand. So, yeah, here.
Wow, so we really devolved into that.
I mean, hey, look, speaking of devolving, where are we going next, man? Because apparently our last topic for the night is what's next after this.
Yeah, what is next? Yeah, and like I said, I figured again, we didn't have to spend like the full hour on this, but yeah.
It didn't happen, Saga. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. That's actually pretty good. Yeah. Shoot out some more suggestions, definitely, but I'll take that into consideration as well. Yeah, man. So I find it interesting that like Book of Boba Fett obviously is the first like live action thing that we get in Star Wars this year. But again, just to give you guys an idea of what the schedule is supposedly for the rest of the docket, we're looking at Obi-Wan Kenobi as our summer show, Cassian Andor as our fall show, and if they stick the landing, we potentially also could get at least the start. I don't think it would air in its entirety, but at least the start of season 3 of The Mandalorian, which rumor has it would be the final season, or at least kind of the wrap-up of Djin Djarin's story. Although by that point, that would probably have another post-credit scene that just hints at something else popping up, and people would kind of be used to like the whole new Disney Plusification show. But as of right now, taking out all of the canceled things, we still have what's left is, and also as well, for sticking to the animated as well, which I still count as being legitimate, because like What If, you're going to see a lot more crossover. And I'm dead serious, mark my words now, like another Marvel animated thing that wasn't necessarily well received, What If, you're going to start seeing a lot of popovers and crossovers between things when Strange Supreme shows up in Doctor Strange 2. But, and like this, you're going to start to see characters that are set up in Bad Batch and other animated things that they bring in, because you know Bad Batch is not going to be the last one, start to pop up in live action properties. And as well, you've also got the Lando spinoff featuring Donald Glover, because Disney is still trying to keep him around. The Ahsoka Tano spinoff, which I believe is the next one, as well as the very much anticipated and pending Star Wars Old Republic show, The Acolyte. So you have all of that to look forward to. Oh, and as well, you still have one movie that's supposedly on the docket, which Disney is still trying to get Taika Waititi around, to make a Star Wars movie for them. In between
that is the perfect example of how I was going to respond to you naming off all of these potential Star Wars things. I was literally going to say, sure, and we even have the Taika Waititi one, which apparently he signed on for like 2 years ago and has not developed anything for.
Dude, and your movie got canceled. Next Gold Wings was supposed to come out 2 years ago, and it's only supposedly coming out next year, even though it still doesn't have a release date. He's still like just wrapping up Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't know what the hell's going on with him.
Here's what I'll say.
He's got to be like the busiest man working in Hollywood right now.
To me right now, Star Wars, and I don't want to like say anything, this isn't political, this is about politics. Is that all right if I give something that's about politics but isn't political? It's an apolitical statement, just politics for the example.
Sure.
It's like when a politician says they're going to do something, that's great, but I'll believe it when I see it's done. That's how I feel about Star Wars.
That's a good analogy. Except basically take that analogy and apply it to like literally all of Hollywood now. Because literally, I don't believe that most movies have release dates until I actually, see the release date.
Yeah, all of Hollywood, but
like a movie being announced,
Star Wars,
a movie, like anything being announced now means nothing to me. Like nothing. I'm like, okay, cool, believe it when I see it.
And I apologize. I know we don't talk about politics here, and that was apolitical enough, so I don't feel bad about bringing it up. It's the only way I could paint the picture. But like, yeah, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I think that's actually really clever. Definitely apply that to all of Hollywood, but like Star Wars on like a hyper specific level.
Oh wait,
all that
can't
sounds
imagine
great.
why. Can't imagine why.
Yeah, all that sounds great, but like, I don't know. I just don't know if we're gonna get it or not. So I could not tell you, Dom. The Force is not strong with the future of Star Wars.
How about this? Which one of any of those, like what I don't even know how many properties I just named off. How many of those properties, which ones do you think you are excited for, if any, or is just like the constant like commercialization of Disney? Does that just over trump like any sort of anticipation or excitement you have going forward?
Well, the one I'm the most excited for is the Acolyte. I've been dying to explore new territory, new terrain, get us away from the Star Wars.
Because that's real. If you think about it, right, that's really the only one that's like not exploring that's really the only one that's not exploring any sort of new, any sort of like familiar territory, you should say. Because if you notice, every other thing that's coming out now after the pull of Rogue Squadron and Rangers of the New Republic, it's literally only like familiar characters that we know. And to answer Caleb Richardson's comment, yes, Rogue One, what's it called? Yes. So to me, what that says is that even if it's not canceled, they're doing with her what they're doing with Taika Waititi, and more than likely what they also did with Rian Johnson, which is where they were like, yeah, sure, we'll totally have you back on. But what's it called?
So I can speak to the Rogue One thing as far as you know, getting solidified information goes. If you consider Campea a good source, I do watch a decent amount of John Campea's show, and he confirmed that it was 100% canceled, that they could not find an agreement, and Patty Jenkins inevitably walked to focus on Wonder Woman 3. Again, who knows? It's Star Wars. So whatever, take that as you will. But Caleb, thanks for hanging out tonight, tuning in. We appreciate it. And you know, like right now, apparently it's 100% canceled, but we don't know. And an old face, but a friendly face has appeared yet again. J-Man, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a long time. I hope you've been doing well, dude. Thanks for stopping by. And Matt's most excited for Obi-Wan. I think that's my runner-up, and then Ahsoka's probably number 3.
Yeah, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka for me, definitely. As much as I'm like, okay, cool, Andor, what's it called? Andor.
I could care less about Andor. Andor's the only one I could care less about, because it's like, we know what happens to him. Who cares? Right. Yeah, like, we know what happens to some of these other guys too, but like, we already got a movie.
But again, you know, it's exactly the thing that they're doing with Phase 4. They're using all these familiar characters we may not have liked as much, beefing them up, and then also adding a shit ton of new characters, which, if you think about it, again, is brilliant. You want to endear someone to something already, add them into something that somebody already knows. It's all about familiarization. They're literally picking apart nostalgia in front of our eyes and figuring out, okay, this is how we do it. People have become so used to this now that they literally lost the ability to appreciate new things because just of how rare it truly is. Like, I hope that wasn't a little bit of too much of a micro dissection there, but I felt like it was kind of necessary. I don't know.
No, it was a good point. It was a good point. Matt even agrees. So, you know what's crazy? We all are on the same page tonight, me, you, and Matt. When has that ever happened?
Crazy. When does that ever happen? I don't know. Matt and I have been on more of a similar page recently than one might have thought. I don't know.
But yeah, I've watched some of the videos. Yeah. And Obi-Wan should be a hit. Let's hope. It will monetarily be a hit just for the subscribers 100%. That it'll probably give. I just hope it's good. You know, like anything Star Wars will be a hit. I just hope it tickles the sort of special feeling Star Wars always gives me. The reason why I love filmmaking, as you guys know, is like I saw Star Wars when I was a little kid. It was like the only other artistic thing outside of music that like I latched onto. So that's why I just like am so critical and go so hard, because I want it to be what it sort of helped make me, which is like a better artist, you know? At least I think so. So that's about it. I think we can get into closing thoughts here if you want to.
Here's the only other thing that I wanted to add, which is that ultimately and this kind of it speaks to Obi-Wan, but I think also kind of ties in as well to, I think, what will be a larger problem is Obi-Wan to me is going to be Star Wars' chance of like really differentiating itself from the MCU, because the biggest thing to me about the MCU, and for what I think is its biggest failing, is that after a while, I mean, you know what? I can't say that, because the thing about the MCU is you tune in for the characters more so than the actual genre. What I think Star Wars needs to focus on is the fact that we are so used to these familiar characters. I think the biggest thing that Obi-Wan needs to be is not another Western, because at the end of the day, look, we even talked about it. Obi-Wan's the one that we're looking forward to, but where is it going to take place primarily? Tatooine. We cannot escape this planet. We cannot escape this fucking planet. And so my whole thing with it is that, okay, as much as everyone is looking forward to Obi-Wan, my whole thing is I'm like, cool, it's still more Star Wars fan fiction fulfillment rather than actual progressive storytelling forward. So I think that the most, it should at least be a change of genre. If anything, I'm more excited. The reason why I'm more excited for both Ahsoka and also in a way Andor is because at the very least, those are characters that we don't have all this baggage with. So that's something that they could do something progressively like newer with, you know, which I think is something that you're also seeing in the Marvel side of things. But that's the thing that I just wanted to throw out there as far as like kind of my final thoughts. I think it also relates to Star Wars overall in general, is that they have a chance to actually like do what Marvel has consistently claimed to do, but never actually has, but just actually shift up and change genre.
Yeah, I think the
ball's in their court.
I think you're right. I'm actually reading the book Obi-Wan is based on right now, just to do a little preparation. It's an interesting story. I like it. It's kind of like him being super incognito, just trying to keep his head down. It's got that Western feel.
It taps more into like the Jedi mystic side, because like Filoni, I know you haven't watched the entirety of the Clone Wars, but Filoni does some crazy stuff with the Force in that show. Like he really, really goes out. And I think if we could see some of that stuff, like him full on communing with Qui-Gon, I think there was a rumor that potentially he was like Liam Neeson could have been in the show. Like if they do more trippy, weird stuff like that, that to me is like, okay, now they're really shifting things up a bit, you know?
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. But a part of me starting to wonder, is it a budgetary reason why we're just always in the same sand?
That's true. Again, there's only so much they can do with those LED screens.
Is Disney secretly in debt and just trying to hide to their shareholders that they're doing fine?
Are they pulling a Waystar on us?
I don't know, but Caleb apparently knows that he's most excited for Andor, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. Yeah, those Obi-Wan and Ahsoka seems to be the winner there between all of us overwhelmingly. Andor and Obi-Wan because it's at the height of Empire, and Ahsoka because we get some more stuff in between episodes 6 and 7. Yeah, for sure. And Jay Manley says, anything outside of Star Wars that you're looking forward to? I mean, how much time do you have?
All that I'll say there is stay tuned for our up-and-coming episodes, because we will discuss it all there, is all that I say, because there is a lot that I'm looking forward to, but there's a lot that I have to warn people about, is all that I'm going to say.
And to be honest with you, I will say, I'll give him one hint. Something that I'm actually like surprisingly looking forward to is Morbius. I mean, I like the idea of the character. It seems to have like a darker grit. I kind of like Marvel a little more when Sony's attached to it.
We all know the real reason. We all let's cut the BS here. We all know the real
it's vampires.
No, well, well, sort of, yeah, but no, Jared Leto, your boy.
Yeah, that too. So I'm pretty excited for Morbius, Jay, and well, obviously
vampires, but yeah, well, because Jared Leto's the one guy that like seems to be like fighting back against the system as far as, oh, the system's gonna troll me, I'm gonna troll right back. So, and in this strange way, it seems to be working, because I've kind of loved him in every movie he's been in since Suicide Squad. So, hey, yeah. I don't know.
So we'll do a review of that one. And Matt, you are living in a bizarro world. I loved the first episode of Boba. I loved No Way Home. And Matt, I don't know if you know this, but I loved Hawkeye. So it's been a while. I hope you don't have a heart attack on us. I know you're young, but
I think you might.
Anything can happen. Yes, should we do star ratings and get out of here?
Finals, thoughts, and star ratings. Yes, I personally thought that Book of Boba was the exact refresher that I needed to get me started for 2022. I really enjoyed kind of being back in that world that the Mandalorian set up. It's still fresh enough that it still feels really interesting and engaging. But I also know that I'm at that point in shows journeys where it's like, okay, I need to start seeing something a little bit different. But I'm still here. I'm still excited. Star Wars still has that kind of fresh feeling for me that it provides in kind of the Disney Plus, Filoni, Favreau controlled space. And so for me, and also just as far as everything that it does from a creative standpoint with Boba, I very, very much enjoyed this episode. I give this a solid 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, I think the filmmaking was stunning. The shots were incredible. It was so beautiful, breathtaking. It felt so real, so lived in. I mean, I honestly think they even stepped it up a notch from Mandalorian, which was awesome, because I did really like the set design, the mise-en-scène in that show. It felt very like, cool, this is a galaxy that characters live in, where I think they completely stripped that away from what I loved about Star Wars in what Matt called earlier, which we missed, which I was saving to bring up now. He called it the Nightmare Trilogy, which I think is a pretty good name for it.
That's good too. Again, like still have to like poster market, but yeah, but again, keep it coming. It works.
Yeah, it's not 100% it, but it's pretty good. So, and that's exactly how I feel about tonight. Like, it's not 100% it, but the first episode was pretty good. I enjoyed my time with it, so that's why it's a 4 out of 5 for me as well. Yeah.
I just wanted to shout out Caleb real quick, who of course take the blue pill. Well, that's ironic. I think if anything, I'm the one taking the blue pill because I'm drinking blue Gatorade right now.
True.
But I did also just want to point out Caleb's pitch, which Caleb, I'm sorry, but if they don't do this pitch, they all deserve to get fired because this is the best pitch I've heard for the show yet. He thinks Obi-Wan should 100% be exploring his PTSD and healing from his trauma with Force Ghost Qui-Gon in a dreamscape where he fights Vader's conscience and comes to accept his past. Boom.
Yo, that's awesome.
If this is not the fucking show, I'm tuning out after the first episode. I'm just saying that right now.
That is really good.
Now, make that shit like the last couple episodes of Star Wars Rebels. I'm here for it, dude. I love it.
Guys, we'll be here every week recapping the Book of Boba Fett every night, the day it airs at 8 p.m. This was awesome. Cannot wait to see you guys going further. We will have a 400 subscriber live stream. We're implementing a lot of new changes for the Talking TV brand. We are going to be on Twitch soon. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff. So we're starting these live streams on YouTube. We will announce on that 400 subscriber live stream where the full version of the stream will be broadcast. It won't be here on YouTube anymore, but we will still be doing it every Wednesday at 8 p.m. when the episode's air. Just so they know, Dom, because we got a lot of changes on the horizon.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm glad you started to signal in some of those. But of course, people, you guys can always continue to help us out. Man, Caleb already getting the love. Caleb might become the new official Talkin' TV favorite in between all the commenters. But
that was a fire comment.
That was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome. I wish I could have come up with a comment that good.
What an elevator pitch.
Yeah, right? Oh, man. But guys, all that I will say is that if you like what you do here, if you want to continue to support us in all of our continued growth and changes throughout it, you guys can continue to support us by clicking the subscribe button down below. You can click the like button next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. And go follow us on our new official social media pages, as you can see right there, at official Talkin' TV podcast on both Facebook and Instagram and Twitter now. Yeah, that's right, Chris. I started us a Twitter, so who knows?
Hell yeah!
We'll see what comes. So we'll see what comes
and
there.
TikTok.
And TikTok.
We posted our first TikTok.
We indeed posted our first TikTok. We will see where that goes. Feel free to follow us everywhere you feel like following us on the social platforms. Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, they can find me everywhere now officially that we have a Twitter. That we are available, and that's at Christian Ivanko. Ivanko spelled Evanko. I make music, which you can find through the link in my bio, and of course, you can find other ways to access this podcast right here through that link in my bio. So yeah, at Christian Ivanko. Ivanko spelled Evanko. Come join the conversation. I hope to see you guys there. And of course, please follow my co-host Dom. I'm sure he's pulling up something witty as we speak.
Did you guess?
I saw you staring at the phone. Yeah.
Yep. What's it called? So yes, you can of course follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, where my latest sarcastic phrases, I'll read them out for you. I think that the most recent one was I posted this ruled for a couple things. I posted a lot recently after my review from No Way Home. The Northman trailer for the Hawkeye finale, I said, "Oh, how the mighty have fallen." And then I just randomly posted one day, all right, calling all nerds after the first year back with Marvel, now that everything's done, what's our next team of Avengers looking like? I posted a thing about Yellow Jackets, which is this awesome new show I'm watching on Showtime, my Merry Christmas post, and then today I just wrote, "This ruled so hard." So yeah, I feel like that's a perfect way to close off this episode. Guys, this was awesome bringing you back, closing on 2021, bringing us into 2022 ultimately. Guys, we'll be back next week on Wednesday, bringing you guys all of the recaps going forward. But once again, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all those socials. And as always, people, remember 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.